Is the Magnus era over? For the first time in many years, Magnus has lost 3 classical games in a tournament, and the tournament has just recently begun. It's in full swing. Maybe he will lose even more. And many people say that, oh, Magnus is washed, and I wanted to comment on that, share my thoughts based on what I've discussed with many of the top grandmasters in my podcasts, because we like discussing Magnus, all chess players do. So I will show you briefly the game that Magnus played against Wesley So, who defeated him for the first time in 8 years, I think. And then I'll share some thoughts with you, which are, I would say, ambivalent. I have ambivalent thoughts on this topic. So Magnus is playing with the white pieces. They open with the Italian game. The Spanish is bishop b5, the Italian is bishop c4, and this is all kind of standard. Bishop g5 is one of the main plans in the Italian for white. Both sides develop. Black goes a5 to hide the bishop on a7, which is exactly what happens in a couple of moves. a4 for white prevents further expansion by black, and then Wesley starts steadily outplaying Magnus. By the way, I've turned off the evil bar. Let me turn it on. So he starts slowly maneuvering his pieces on the king side. The king, by the way, is perfectly safe here because white cannot get to it, and black's plan is to put the knight on f4, maybe at some point push f5 and dominate the king side. So this is exactly what happens. So knight h5 hints at knight h4. Magnus also maneuvers. Magnus wants to put the knight on f5, which is a great square when black has already committed with the pawn, with the g pawn that cannot go back to control the f5 square. So queen g5, more pieces join the kingside attack. By the way, Wesley So in a post-match interview said that he was not afraid of Magnus this time, which is a very important point that we will discuss later. So he said that Magnus is in bad shape, and I was feeling comfortable. Magnus has already lost a couple of games, so I was optimistic about my chances. That's what Wesley said. Even though he said I'm a big fan of Magnus, I'm like his biggest fan. I have been influenced by his play a lot, and it's a pleasure and honor every time I play him. That's what Wesley said. Wesley is such a chill, such a nice guy, by the way. I really hope that we can record a podcast episode with him one day. 93. So Magnus wants to put one of the knights on f5, but black disallows this, trading the bishop for the knight, and black puts the knight on f4. And it's usually a very good sign when you are able to do this and create lots of threats and control lots of squares in the enemy camp with your knight like this. I think knight f5 is worth more than a queen. Something like that was said by Garry Kasparov at some point. So f5 for white, f4 for black. Queen e1, and now Magnus is slowly shuffling the pieces, as is Wesley. Slowly shuffling the pieces. Magnus tries to open up the center to get some scope for the bishops, but Wesley wisely puts most of his pawns on the dark squares because he has no dark squared bishop, and white does have one. And now the knights jump together to g6 and f4, and it's not clear how to proceed. And here, most likely, Magnus could have made a draw. Here they shuffled a little bit. d5, bishop retreated. White wanted to trade the bishops to get access to the f5 square, which is exactly what they did. But now black decided to go after this knight, and white cannot hold on to this outpost on f5. And here white went bishop h4, and Wesley went queen g6. And he said in a post-match interview that he would be fine with the draw with black against Magnus, obviously. And I think had Magnus played bishop g3, Wesley would have opted for queen g5, and they would have repeated moves. Wesley is a very cautious player. He is never risking, like almost never. He's much more drawish than, for example, Anish Giri, about whom there are lots of memes that he's a draw-niche Giri. Anish, by the way, is a very combative player these days. But Wesley is more cautious. But instead of repeating with bishop g3 here, Magnus wants to play for a win. He told the Norwegian TV after this game that, yeah, I know I'm in bad shape, but I have to do something. I have to win games, because he's still very competitive and he wants to win the event, even though he started off on a wrong foot, so to say. So knight g3 is what he chooses, and he decides, okay, I'll outmaneuver somehow my opponent. But don't forget who Wesley So is. Wesley So is the guy who defeated Magnus Carlsen in a match, in a World Chess Championship match. Did you know this fact? In 2019, I think. In 2019, there was the Fischer World Chess Championship, hosted by FIDE. There was no freestyle chess back then. And Wesley played Magnus in the final. They played several games. I don't remember how many, but Magnus got crushed, like by a huge margin. So Wesley is a very strong player, obviously, very talented, even though he's not as young as the Indian or Uzbekistani juniors. And Wesley finds the top move here, queen h6. And after Magnus decides to go for some queenside counterplay, Wesley ignores it, and he moves all the pieces to the king side. And after rook b3, he ignores the threat on b7, puts his knight on g6. Now the bishop is hanging. Knight retreats to protect the bishop, and you see how clumsy Magnus's pieces are. It's not like Magnus. Magnus always loves harmony, always loves making sure that his pieces work together in unison, like some beautiful geometric pattern, or like some beautiful symphony with lots of instruments. But here, no. Black is very harmonious, white is not, and here f5, black strikes using the fact that white's knight is no longer controlling f5, and now black threatens to take here and then take on f1. The f1 knight is hanging, so queen e1 protects this knight, and now black still takes, white takes with check, black blocks the check, and you see all black's pieces are on the king side. This b3 rook for white is not doing too much. If you take this pawn here, well, black will just crush white on the king side like this, and then double up, and it's not going to end well. So because of this, g3 is chosen by Magnus to control the square, but now black doubles the rooks. Rook f2, desperately trying, you know this scene from Game of Thrones, the Game of Thrones TV series, where Hodor is trying to hold the door. This rook is like Hodor, trying desperately to hold this door. But it's not helping too much. Now the queen is infiltrating and pressuring everything. Most importantly, pinning this knight, so the king escapes the spin, but now a trade happens on f3. And this is the last point where Magnus had a chance. He could have played king h3, which is not obvious, especially when you have just 2 minutes on the clock. But the idea is that you can take this pawn later on. It will not go anywhere. And you are not losing immediately. Black still has an advantage, but engine will save this probably. Instead, Magnus takes this pawn, which is just an oversight. He just missed a resource that Wesley had, which happens to him in this tournament, not for the first time. Wesley takes with check, Magnus goes king h3, and he probably thought that black will have to trade the rooks here, and this is drawn because this pawn is hanging, there are checks. If king here, knight e3, now there is an attack, and white in some future may even play for a win, even though white is down a pawn because white's king is untouchable and black's king is in trouble. Already black has to give up a pawn to prevent those shenanigans by white and not to lose in this position. So probably rook takes f3 was what Magnus was calculating from afar, but he missed queen d4. And unfortunately for him, he has to trade the queens, because otherwise this rook has to be protected by the queen. And if queen e2, this check happens, and then this check happens, the pawn is pinned on g3, and everything collapses here for white. So white has to trade the queens, and then white has to trade the rooks, because otherwise the f1 knight will fall. So white trades the rooks, and in this knight endgame, like it's very easy. I don't think even I against Magnus probably would be able to convert this, because knight endgames with an extra pawn usually are easily winning. Like pawn endgames, they are very similar. When you have rook endgames, for example, it's very hard. Most likely, extra pawn is still a draw in most cases. But for knight endgames, this is easy conversion. King e4. Wesley even gives up the b7 pawn, because if white takes, white will probably just lose horribly like this, and then the pawn will queen. So taking on b7 is impossible. Here, desperately, Magnus tries to survive this, but he's not surviving this. Trading the knights is never a good idea. Here, the pawn endgame is easily winning for black. I drew some arrows how to stop the white pawn and then advance black's pawns. So instead of trading here, king c2 is chosen by Magnus, and Wesley still takes a pawn. And after g5, king e5, Magnus resigns because this pawn is a distraction for black's king, but it's not going to do white any good. Black's king will gobble up this pawn and then come back and win the game. So why is Magnus losing all those games in this tournament? And he also lost one game against Jordan Van Forest, his former second, in the previous classical event he was playing this year, Tepe Sigeman chess tournament in Malmö, Sweden. So he lost 4 games within the span of a couple of months, which is unthinkable. You know, there used to be a record. There still is a record. 125 games without losing a single one. This record belongs to Magnus Carlsen. He played at the top level. He played the top guys like Wesley, like Caruana, like Giri, like Nepomniachtchi, like all those guys. None of them was able to defeat him in 125 games. This lasted more than a year, maybe a couple of years. He was undefeated. It was I think 8 years ago, this streak that he had. And now he's losing every other game. So first of all, I don't think that this is necessarily the end of Magnus's domination, end of Magnus's era, because you cannot draw conclusions based on one event. One event, anything can go wrong, bad shape, maybe he has a baby and does not get enough sleep, maybe, I don't know, he has some health problems or something like that. He said in an interview that he was not thinking straight, he was drifting away, he was thinking about the Champions League, football, soccer, but these are obviously not very satisfactory reasons for Magnus's fans, but I think that he's just in bad shape. In every kind of sport this happens. Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic in tennis also, they are goats, but they had bad events, they had bad streaks, some injury or some mental difficulties. So this happens. And this doesn't mean necessarily that this will continue. Maybe if there are a couple of more events where Magnus underperforms, then we can say that, yeah, this is the end of Magnus's era. But I think that we can say that this is the beginning of the end of the Magnus's era, because he's no longer dominating as confidently as he used to be. He is in Rapid and Blitz, and I think he will continue for quite some time, maybe 3 years, maybe even 5 years. In Rapid and Blitz, he'll still be undisputed number one by a huge margin. But in Classical, he's just the first among equals now. And he's still dominating, and he's still winning, is winning most events he's participating in. For example, in the Swedish tournament, yes, he did lose one game, but he came back and won the whole event. He shared first and second places with Arjun Erigaisi and then defeated him on tiebreaks. So even when he has bad form, bad events, he is still dominating. But the degree of his domination is gradually lessening. He's getting older, he's dedicating less time to chess, he has focus on other things like family life, which is very respectable, and I'm sure that he's doing the right thing for himself. But that means that he's not improving, while his competitors are still improving. Maybe he's not declining, but they are improving. They are working on their chess. Gukesh, Pragnananda, Sindarov, Abdusatorov, they are working on their chess. Many of them are working 8 to 10 hours per day. I record podcast episodes with those guys. I know this. Well, at least they say this, but people who know them also say this is true. They are fanatics. They are obsessed with chess. And Magnus is obsessed with golf these days. He's obsessed with his wife, which is, of course, very logical and understandable. He's obsessed with his baby, which is very logical and understandable. But chess, still he's a big fan of chess. He loves the game, but he's not he's not focused on it as much. So this means that this gap between him and the opposition will gradually diminish, and I think this could be the end of the beginning of the end of his era, but it will last, this transition period, for several years. I don't think that anyone is capable of claiming the #1 spot, taking it from Magnus just yet. Maybe in a couple of years, we will see. Please write your predictions in the comments, and if you want to see more recaps of top level chess by me, drop a comment saying this. If there is enough of such comments, I'll try and do this on a regular basis. See you in the next one. Bye bye.